let's talk about something that's way more common than you might think, but often gets hidden away in the shadows: delayed orgasm. It can really have a huge impact on a person's quality of life. So, in this explainer, we're going to break down the science behind it, what causes it, how it's treated, the whole shebang.
So let's just start with the core question. What happens when this fundamental part of the sexual experience is just consistently out of reach? For millions of men, this isn't a hypothetical, it's their reality. So let's get right into it. All right, here's our game plan. We'll start by defining what we're actually talking about. Then we'll untangle the really complex causes. After that, we'll look at how doctors diagnose it, check out the treatment options, and finally, take a peek at what the future might hold.
Okay, first things first. What exactly is delayed orgasm? Before we can get anywhere else, we have to start with a really clear definition.
According to the DSM-5, which is kind of the official playbook for this stuff, the clinical definition has a few really important parts. First, it's not a one-time thing. It has to happen on most occasions for at least 6 months straight. And this is the most important part. It has to cause significant personal distress. That feeling of distress is really what turns it from just a personal quirk into a genuine clinical issue.
And then you have the most extreme end of the spectrum, anorgasmia. Now, this isn't just a delay we're talking about. This is the complete inability to reach orgasm at all, no matter what kind of stimulation is happening. You can imagine how incredibly frustrating that would be. To really put this in perspective, think about premature ejaculation. That's something most people have heard of, right? Well, delayed orgasm is basically its polar opposite. One is all about less time to climax, the other is about way more time. They're literally two ends of the very same spectrum. So how common is this? Well, studies suggest it's around 7%. But, and this is a big but, that number is almost certainly too low. Because of stigma, because of embarrassment, a lot of men just don't bring this up with their doctors. So the real figure, it's probably much, much higher.
Okay, so what's actually causing this? Well, it's rarely one simple thing you can point to. It's more like this complex web of factors. You've got biology, psychology, and even relationship dynamics all tangled up together. Now, if we look at cases that show up later in life, what's called secondary delayed orgasm, the picture gets a little clearer. And wow, look at that. A massive 42% are linked to SSRIs, which are a super common type of antidepressant. After that, you see psychological causes, low testosterone, and issues with penile sensation rounding out the list. And the impact of these medications can be absolutely profound. See, SSRIs work by boosting serotonin in your brain, which is great for your mood. The problem is, that same chemical can put a damper on the dopamine pathways that are crucial for orgasm. Just look at a drug like fluoxetine. Some studies report that up to 75% of people who take it experience these side effects. That's a huge deal.
And beyond those big ones, there's a whole host of other things that can contribute. You've got hormonal stuff like thyroid or prolactin imbalances. Then there are psychological triggers like performance anxiety or past trauma. Those are huge. It can even be things you might not think of, like penile hyperstimulation from certain masturbation habits, or nerve damage from a past pelvic surgery. So with all these possible causes, how on earth does a doctor figure out what's really going on? Well, that's where the diagnostic process comes in. It's like a systematic investigation to get to the root cause for each individual person.
The path to a diagnosis usually follows these 4 steps. But honestly, the most critical part, by far, is the very first one: just talking. A doctor takes a really thorough history, medical, psychological, sexual. It's in that conversation where the most important clues usually pop up, long before any tests are even ordered. So once a likely cause is found, what can actually be done about it? The key here is to realize that because the causes are so all over the map, the solutions have to be just as diverse. There's no one-size-fits-all pill here. It's all about using a whole toolkit of different approaches. Now, here is probably the single most important thing to know about treatment, and it really surprises a lot of people. There are currently 0 FDA-approved medications specifically for this condition. 0. That means everything is about addressing the root cause, using therapy, and sometimes using other medications off-label. So the foundational treatments are all about going after that root cause. If a medication is the problem, step 1 is adjusting it. If testosterone is low, replacement therapy can be an option. For the psychological stuff, sex therapy using things like cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, or mindfulness is really key.
And for those issues of hyperstimulation, something called masturbatory retraining can actually help recalibrate the body's response.
For guys who are dealing with decreased penile sensation, there's a really interesting physical therapy called penile vibratory stimulation, or PVS. It's a pretty straightforward, low-risk approach where a vibrator is used to increase stimulation. And the results can be pretty amazing. One study found that 72% of men with anorgasmia were able to regain orgasm on at least some occasions. That's a huge win.
And while no drugs are officially approved, some are used off-label with some really promising results. Cabergoline, for example, is a dopamine agonist. It basically mimics that pleasure chemical dopamine in the brain. Bupropion works on both dopamine and norepinephrine, making more of them available. And yeah, even stimulants like Adderall have been used to help improve focus for people whose minds tend to wander during sex.
But at the end of the day, the real philosophy of treatment boils down to this. There is no magic bullet. The right path has to be completely individualized. It all depends on an open, honest conversation between a patient and their doctor about the potential upsides and downsides of every single option.
So where do we go from here? In our final section, let's take a look at the future of treatment and some of the hurdles we still have to get over. Believe it or not, the biggest roadblock to finding new treatments isn't biological, it's logistical. Before researchers can even start testing new drugs, they need everyone to agree on a universal definition of the condition. Without that, you can't design a proper clinical trial. I mean, think about it. How can you measure if a treatment works if everyone is measuring the problem differently? This is the fundamental challenge holding everything back. Which really leaves us with this final thought. Could something as simple as just agreeing on a definition be the key that finally unlocks the door to a whole new generation of treatments for millions of men? It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest breakthroughs in medicine don't start in a lab with a test tube, they start with a conversation.